Hi y'all. Today I want to talk about the difference between currency and money and the different forms of money. When I talk about money, you think that. Okay, you're thinking the greenback. You're thinking, a Federal Reserve note. Benjamin Franklin, Andrew Jackson, Ulysses Grant. That's what you're thinking. But I have some different ideas about what is money. In order to be money, there's three requirements. It must be a unit of exchange. You can trade with it. It must be a unit of account. You can do accounting with it and keep track of things. And it must be a store of value. Now that is where, historically, the third thing, store of value, is where the Federal Reserve note falls short. As we know, we've heard of the word inflation. That is a gradual erosion of the purchasing power of money or currency. And as I actually call this currency because I don't believe that it meets the store of value characteristic. Although in the farm economy and the rural economy now, cash is absolutely king because it seems like nobody has it. But historically, the dollar has lost quite a bit of value. So currency, that's what everything is, like the euro, the Japanese yen, the Brazilian real, the Mexican peso, the Canadian loonie, the South African rand, the Chinese yuan, the Russian ruble, on and on and on and on. Those are all currencies. And I would not call any of them money under my definition because they don't have the store of value. So, I have three items here, and I consider, you can call them all money, but I'd like to differentiate between currency and real money. That's physical silver. Look at that shine. It's actually the second most reflective metal there is, which makes it, it's like one of the most reflective metals there are, and it's also the second most conductive of electricity and of all metals, which makes it, all of our electronics have silver in them because of the connectivity is so reliable and so efficient. That brings it has unbelievable industrial uses. So silver and gold have been, well, let's talk about gold. Gold has been, the first use of gold as money dates back to 643 BC, before Christ, in the country that is now known as Turkey. And they figured out that it was pretty useful for conducting business. It's a unit of exchange, unit of account, and it meets the store of value requirement. Remember, it is not money in my definition, or even the Webster dictionary says, whoops, I got the wrong one. Anyway, I read it and it agreed with what I said. And as a matter of fact, this stuff was backed. I mean, you could exchange your dollars for gold you could flat out do it up until August 15th, 1971. Richard Nixon temporarily suspended the exchange of US dollars for gold. And as you might have figured out by now, there is nothing more permanent than a temporary action by the government. So, anyway, he no longer allowed the Federal Reserve Bank to redeem dollars, US dollars, for gold. And that essentially that was the end of this stuff being fully backed by gold, and it hasn't gotten better since then. They even to this day, they will not let us. Nobody is allowed to see the gold. There is no audit of the gold in the Fort Knox and the New York Fed and all the other places. We don't know what's there. And what's another thing about that? But anyway, what else meets my definition of money? Remember, it must be a unit of account, medium of exchange, and a store of value. I believe that common caliber ammunition meets that definition. Because you can trade with it by the case, the box, or the round. I believe that is a form of precious metal, much like this, but even possibly easier to do business with, because this is essentially $1 right here, and this is Federal Premium Gold Metal Match ammunition. This is good stuff. It's loaded with a 168 grain Sierra Match King boat tail hollow point. This stuff is capable of making a 1,000-yard shot. Of course, the velocity isn't very high when it reaches the target. It's basically in a nosedive. But that's pretty good for $1. Anyway, I believe that this meets the definition of money. And actually, this does not. Because the components of ammunition are a copper jacket, lead core, and brass is an alloy, generally 70% copper and 30% zinc. And then, of course, you got gunpowder, but it is a precious metal. They take industrial metals and put it into a precious form that's usable, and it can be used as a store value and also something that you can trade with. So, I genuinely do have different definitions of money. How about that shine? I like silver a lot. It's the people's money. Our dimes and quarters were 90% silver up until 1964. I think that was the last year. And so literally, this stuff used to be, our money was made of this stuff. And our money was backed by this stuff in exchange for gold. But not anymore. This is a Federal Reserve note. It says right at the top, a note is a liability, like a debt. This is a liability of the Federal Reserve Bank. And by the way, the Federal Reserve Bank is neither federal and has no reserves. You want to talk about some mischief, some manipulation and lying. They don't have any money. They print it. And they buy government debts mostly. In the mortgage crisis, they were buying a whole lot of mortgage-backed securities and asset-backed securities. But essentially, this stuff is backed by debt. It's not so much backed by this stuff or gold. It's mostly backed by debt. Mostly, the Federal Reserve is a huge buyer of U.S. government debt. What happens is the government runs a deficit, and somebody's got to buy that debt that funds the deficit. Well, the Federal Reserve Bank just prints it out of nothing. It's like they got an Excel spreadsheet and there's nothing there, and then they just hit a couple buttons and boop, there's $1 trillion there, and that they can go out and buy U.S. government debt, treasury debt. And that allows our government to continue doing what they're doing, overspending. But over time, we lose the store of value, which differentiates this from this and this. These have real value. real uses. This is a piece of paper or with cotton in it. And when numbers in your bank account, those are just, it's just digits, digital. There really is no backing. Literally our currency is backed by debt and the ability to tax, and honestly our military, because if you don't accept dollars for payment, our governments, our military seems to get involved. That's a whole nother story. But anyway, hope you learned something. Enjoy your evening.